Hi, this is Kendra from Pencil and Pigment, and today I wanted to talk about Sumi paints. So they are such an interesting, cool paint with such a rich history, and lately I have seen them sort of explode in popularity since they have figured out a way to sort of mix them with watercolors. And so it's not just the plain black ink anymore. So Sumi actually just means black ink painting in Japanese. And the history of it is incredibly fascinating. So Sumi painting actually started in China. And they had scholars and folks writing stuff down. And it was super popular in, I think the Tang Dynasty. And then in the Song Dynasty, they started adding images and little pictures to things they were writing to kind of enhance the effect. And in the 17th century, Buddhist monks actually brought the art of Sumi painting to Japan. And Japan just fell in love with it because it is such a really cool thing, and have been using it and doing fun things with it ever since. So, traditional Sumi ink is made from either pine or veggie oil and soot and mixed with gelatin. And the process to get this soot is they have to fire this veggie oil, and sometimes it can be canola or sometimes it can be sesame. And then they mix it with the gelatin and they knead it by hand or by foot. And then they shape it into wooden molds. And then they leave it to dry on ashes. So it loses about 70% of its moisture. So that all evaporates. And this can take anywhere from, a week to 8 weeks. And they try and do this in the winter so things don't spoil and go bad. I want to say 2 caveats about Sumi ink, because I think it's such a beautiful and rich paint and ink alternative that the West is just now, well, not just now, but we're sort of falling in love with more and more since they're starting to combine it with watercolors. I would say if you are vegetarian or vegan and you want to make sure that you purchase only vegan products, if that's something that's important to you, Sumi paint is made with gelatin. It's made with animal glue. So this is not a vegan product. The watercolors that are being made with Sumi ink, are also not vegan. So this may not be the product for you, and I would search maybe for a different type of ink elsewhere. The other caveat I wanted to mention is about fountain pens. So for calligraphers that prefer to use a fountain pen and put this ink into the cartridge of that style of fountain pen, the Sumi ink the particles literally sort of float and suspend in the water, and it's going to gum up your fountain pen and ruin it completely because of the soot. So the only type of pens that I would recommend for calligraphy with Sumi ink would be the dip pens, like a nib calligraphy pen, or a glass dip pen, anything that you just dip, no cartridges or anything that you load. Let's see. The basic premise behind Sumi is not to exactly replicate what you're painting, but instead to sort of reproduce. You just want to capture the spirit. So when drawing a flower, you want to convey the fragrance. When drawing a horse, you want to kind of convey the spirit of the horse, which I think is such a cool idea. So every stroke has meaning when you're doing Sumi art, Sumi painting. And there's no wasted lines. And folks that specialize in this spent years and years and years working on this to make every brush stroke count and matter. And there is a posture and a way you hold the brush. It's like perpendicular when you're doing the calligraphy. Everything is very specific and it's very, very beautiful. So on Amazon, I'm not sure where you purchase things from, and I am no one to judge where you do. I know Amazon sells the Boko Undu Sumi watercolor set. It's about $12. Just keep in mind that the watercolor Sumi mixes are not lightfast. A bunch of the colors fade. Blick has the Yasutomo Sumi watercolors in a couple different sets. So it's beginning to get really popular mixing the watercolor and these inks. There is a company called Choosing Keeping, and they are based out of London. So I don't really order from them because I'm in the US and the shipping is just, it's a lot. It's a whole nother product. But they do a lot of stuff with Gansai Tambi, and they have a darkness and light Sumi set. And basically, if you are into sort of monochromatic minimalism in your painting, that sort of simplicity of just sort of one stroke flowers or portraits, and this might really appeal to you. You don't have to worry about color mixing or color theory or being overly detailed. It's just a very quick, sort of thoughtful process of just laying down a stroke that it conveys as much as possible. And the idea of that is just such a really cool idea. I'm not a minimalist in my art. I'm probably the exact opposite. So I did receive a Sumi set. It was one of the traditional, because you can buy them in containers of ink and you can buy them in a stick. And a stick you have to put on a suzuri stone and you grind it with water. And from there you can kind of decide how thick or how thin you want it, and then from there figure out, okay, what level of pressure do I need to add or touch down my brush to this paper to get the look and the tonality and the values that I want to create. And that can be really fun, kind of a hands-on process when you're making your own Sumi ink. The paper's interesting too. So initially it started out as like bamboo slips and silks and stuff. And then eventually it moved into hemp and mulberry fibers. And then finally they learned how to do rice paper from a variety of elm tree. And that's sort of what people use now, is the rice paper. And they even make the rice paper from mulberry and bamboo now. And to make the paper, there's a bleaching process and they add fruit juice, and I mean the process can be over 100 steps, and a lot of it, if it's made within like a family, it's a secret process, a secret recipe, and that's kind of cool. I like that multi-generation all working on one thing to make and create, and that's really neat. So that's kind of the history of Sumi Ink. That's kind of what it's about. It's kind of who it's for. It's very fascinating. I love seeing things transcending different cultures and moving around and different people falling in love and being introduced to all these different art forms. I think it's very wonderful. All right, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Bye.